With me today is the most outrageous and most extreme Camry ever produced, this 2020 Toyota Camry TRD. Now take a minute and look on the outside of this Camry TRD. It looks nothing like previous generations. Even the current generation of the Camry, it looks good, but it looks nothing like this. Now, Toyota did more than just cosmetic changes for this Camry TRD. They changed a whole bunch of things, including a new suspension setup, bigger brakes, lighter wheels, stickier tires, new catback exhaust, and a brand new interior just for this TRD model. So, is this the best Camry ever, and should you consider it as your next sedan? Well, keep watching and find out. Besides the Honda Civic Type R, there isn't another production sedan or hatchback on the road that looks as extreme and as wild as the new Camry TRD. Keep in mind, this is a Camry, which was reserved for people who drive under the speed limit and could really care less about looks or how engaging the drive is. However, Toyota woke up one day and said, no more, let's make a Camry that people will drool over and want to drive. The TRD's front end receives a new blacked out grille with a huge lower splitter that stretches from one side to the other. The LED headlights also have special black housing that matches very well with the grille. Moving on to the side of the Camry TRD, it looks more like a track car than an everyday sedan. It sits low to the ground, being about 0.6 inches lower than a normal Camry. This is due to the specially tuned TRD springs and shocks. In addition, there are larger roll bars fitted to prevent body roll. The wheels are 19-inch black TRD wheels, and they also weigh 3.1 pounds less than normal wheels. They are also half-inch wider. Behind the wheels, you can see red painted calipers. And no, they aren't just for show. There are dual piston calipers compared to the single ones on normal Camrys, and the front rotors are also 0.9 inches bigger. This combination gives the Camry TRD more stopping power on the track and on the road. And on the bottom, you see sleek black side arrow skirts that matches nicely with the optional midnight black roof and the TRD black mirrors. Moving on to the back, the most controversial part to the Camry TRD is definitely the rear wing. At first, it seems like it's a bit overkill, but when you match it with all the other aero body components added to the Camry TRD, it seems to fit really well. The emblem and letters are all in black, and look at the bottom diffuser in the rear. It is enormous and really adds a sports car vibe, especially with the dual exhaust tips hanging out that are massive, and that catback exhaust is TRD tuned. The trunk is like any other Camry. It's nice and big. However, the rear seats no longer fold down because a body brace is put behind the rear seats for added stiffness. So you do lose some utility, but you gain some body stiffness because of it. Moving on to the second row, the seats look like leather, they feel like leather, but really are Softex material. The seat belts are in red and are red stitching and fabric inserts as you see here. Once you sit inside, you'll know you're in a TRD. However, there are no vents for the second row passengers, nor ports of any kind, and you don't even get a middle armrest. Moving to the front, the cabin is modern and sporty. The dash, seats, door panels are all black with red stitching. The main infotainment area is covered in black and aluminum type trim. Even the carpets look outstanding. The steering wheel looks great and feels great. It has a good thickness and size. The buttons on the right are for the adaptive cruise control, modes, and scrolling for the radio. Left buttons are for volume, voice command, phone control, and also control to the info screen and the gauge cluster. Speaking of gauge cluster, take a look. It is completely in red and it stands out. Although the graphics and info screen is not in red, and I wish that was changed. You can scroll through and see various important information about the car. To the left of the steering wheel, you have some buttons for auto high beam, traction control, trunk, and fuel lid release. Moving to the infotainment screen, it is a 7-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. All menu items are in red, of course. The interface speed and responsiveness is okay, but when you move around, it does seem to lag for a split second. You have a very large volume knob. On top, you have tune and scroll knob and some quick navigating buttons on both sides. Moving to climate control, it is single zone and pretty easy to use. There's a large knob for temperature and large knob for fan control and some buttons for modes and defrosters. On the bottom, you have one USB port and a 12V outlet and some empty space. Moving on, you have a standard shifter with TRD lettering and red stitching. Looks really nice. You also have manual shifting, which you can use the provided paddle shifters with. There are 2 cup holders, a few drive modes, Eco, Normal, and Sport, and brake hold and parking brake release. Finally, an armrest with 2 more USB ports inside. Really, nothing on top, no homelink buttons and no sunroof. As for the engine, it's a 3.5-liter V6 pushing 301 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque. This engine is mated to an 8-speed automatic. All right, let's go for a drive. Let's see how good this Camry TRD is on the roads. All right, I'm off. So, first impression is I gotta make a comment about this exhaust system. I love it. I love it. And that's a big thing. On the outside, when you start up the Camry, you could definitely hear that this catback is a lot more sporty, throaty. And inside, because of how well insulated it is, you don't really get that much noise, but you do get a subtle exhaust note in here. That just sounds good. Every time you accelerate, you get that sound, and it really makes the drive worth it. And it's not too loud, it's not obnoxious like a 4Runner TRD Pro. That exhaust was very loud and drony, and you're gonna get sick of it. This one, it's just a subtle note. Now the second thing is the steering. I could tell this steering is stiffer, and it just makes you feel like you're more connected to the Camry. Now, part of that could be because of the tires, the stickier tires, the wider tires. Actually, a lot may have to do with that. There's more heft to it, and it feels good. It's also very, very precise. There is no steering plate. Unfortunately, you guys can't see it because there's no moonroof or sunroof to hang my camera, but man, just a slight wiggle, just very slight of a wiggle on the steering wheel, I could feel the Camry move. There is absolutely no play in the steering wheel. So it's super precise. It's a good weight. So overall, it makes you feel like you're connected to this Camry, and I really like that. This steering wheel is actually leather, and it feels good. The 10 and 2 spot is a little bit thicker, and it's well bolstered. I dig this steering wheel. Now, as for the brakes, that's one of the things that was changed on this Camry TRD. The rotors are about an inch bigger, so almost 13 inches. The calipers, dual piston calipers on the front rather than single piston. And I could tell when I'm stopping, I do feel like it catches on faster, and also the brake pedal feel is stiffer. So you definitely need to put a little bit more pressure, but once you do, this Camry TRD comes to a stop relatively quickly. So these seats, in terms of the bolstering, they don't look like they're very bolstered, but they are. Unfortunately though, I think it's bolstered a little bit too narrow, so even me on my back, I feel like it's like trying to squeeze me, right? And it's holding me in, but it feels a tad little bit uncomfortable on my back. Same thing with the bottom. The bottom cushion is a little bit too bolstered and narrow, so I feel like my thighs are stretching it out. So the seats, they're okay, kind of mixed. In terms of visibility, it's good. I can see well past the hood. The windshield, even though it's very sloped, I can still see it's nice and big. Same thing with the door panels. The door panels are low, so even though the roof is kind of low, the windows are still a decent height, so I can see well over the door panels, see clearly through the windows. The back window, however, is kind of narrow. It is kind of covered by the seat headrests, and also it's just narrow. This doesn't look like a Camry. Honestly, it doesn't. It looks like you're in something, much more expensive and something that has a lot more power under the hood. I'm getting looks, and I bet if I told them that this was a Camry, they would be surprised. Now, one thing about this 8-speed is, I showed you guys, there's 3 driving modes. There's an Eco, Normal, and Sport. Unfortunately, even if you're in Normal, when you're cruising around town, it'll drop into eco mode, and I can see it in the gauge cluster. Unfortunately, when it does that, the Camry just seems like it's bogged down. Like it shifted to basically 8th gear, and it's barely at 1,000 RPM, even when I'm going 30, 40 miles per hour. And in those situations, it just feels like, it's slow, right? And if you're driving a Camry TRD that looks like this, you don't want it to feel slow. Even if you're not going fast, you don't want it to feel slow. When I'm in sport mode, it corrects that. The RPM sits a little bit higher, but it's not annoying. A lot of the automatics that have sport mode, the transmission will hold its gears way too hot, way too long. RPMs are way too high, and it's uncomfortable. That's not the case. Even in sport mode, it's a little bit higher and perfectly drivable, and you don't get annoyed by it. Now, one interesting thing in terms of pricing is Toyota usually makes the TRD variant of any model usually the most expensive, or the second most expensive. So if you look at TRD Pro, say 4Runner or Sequoia or Tundra, even the TRD Off-Road for the RAV4, they're the most expensive trim that you could select from those models. For this TRD Camry, that's not the case. This is actually in the middle. The price for this is about $31,000, a little bit more than that, and competes directly head-on with a 2-liter turbo Accord Sport, which is priced exactly the same, because beforehand there was really nothing competing with the Accord Sport, which, by the way, I love. And I love it because it has a 6-speed manual still available. But besides that, Camry really didn't have anything to compete. The Camry did have the XSE, which looks great with a V6 engine, but it was the top trim level. It was much more expensive, right? And you do have the XLE, which also has a V6 engine option, but that one costs more than $4,000 than this TRD. In fact, this is the cheapest V6 Camry you can buy today at $31,000. So this is, if you think about it, an amazing value for what you're getting. But with that said, Toyota did have to take some stuff out because they added so many things in, right? So there are a few things that's lacking in here compared to regular Camry and compared to others. So what are those things? Well, let's start with the infotainment. This is a 7-inch, not an 8-inch, and the interface, I could tell, is not the newest one. So it's a little bit slow. You also don't get navigation. That's okay, because most of you guys are going to use CarPlay anyways, but that is downgraded. The climate control, single zone, not dual zone. So that's been downgraded. In the back seat, there's no vents, there's no USB ports. That's been downgraded. There's no sunroof or panoramic sunroof. That's not in here. That's been taken away. The headlights and taillights, they're only partial LED. They're not full LED. So that's been downgraded. So Toyota subtracted a few things so they could give you so much more. Bigger brakes, lighter wheels, stickier tires, this exhaust, right? The custom interior. You're getting a whole lot for this price range. So, also in terms of safety features, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, that was taken away too. But you do get Toyota Safety Sense P, which gives you most of the essentials: pre-collision, lane warning and assist, auto high beam, dynamic radar, cruise control, stuff like that you still get, but you don't get the blind spot monitoring. That was taken away. It's very quiet in here. The Camry is really well insulated. I don't hear any road noise. Wind noise, a little bit, but I really don't hear the cars passing by, so I think it's pretty good. And I was driving this around with the radio on, and I really couldn't hear anything. Yeah, acceleration is really strong. This V6, over 300 horsepower with this 8-speed, yeah, it's a really good combination. And yeah, this is a really fast Camry. 0 to 60, anywhere between 5.5 to 5.8 seconds. That is really quick for a sedan. Now, the thing that's weird about this manual shifting is that when you first go into manual shifting, it'll go into 4th gear. Even when you're stopped, when you go to manual, it'll say 4. So it'll do like a weird thing where it'll shift up to 4th gear, but it still go downshift down to 1st. However, if you're trying to get maximum speed or acceleration off the line, you don't want that, right? So you want to control it. So when you go into manual, it'll say S4, and then you use your paddle shifters and you go down to S1. So you have to manually do that. For some reason, Toyota did that. At whatever speed you go into manual shifting, it'll say S4. It'll never go to S1. As for pricing, the TRD Camry is one of the 12 trim levels you can choose from, including the hybrids. The TRD is the cheapest V6 Camry you could buy today, and it comes in a tad above $31,000. In fact, it is more than $3,400 less than the XLE V6 Camry. And if you didn't want the included summer tires, you can replace them with all-season tires absolutely free. Next, let's look at the good and bad to this brand new Camry TRD. Starting with the good, the outside looks like a track car and it certainly looks good. Inside, you have a powerful V6 engine transmission. You also have amazing steering feel and precision. You do also get a very quiet cabin with great visibility, along with mesmerizing exhaust note, and finally, there is improved braking and corner carving abilities. As for the bad, there are a few things as well. The TRD seats are not that comfortable. There's many features taken away, such as heated seats, sunroof, dual zone climate control, etc. Blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert was also removed. Rear seats can no longer fold down. Rear passengers get very little. And normal and eco mode makes the car feel underpowered at times. To conclude, the Camry TRD is an amazing car that breaks the mold of boring and bland sedans. The TRD upgrades are not only on the outside, the changes done to the brakes, steering, suspension, and exhaust note made a huge difference in the drive. This Camry TRD replaces the Honda Accord Sport as my favorite sports sedan. I give the Camry TRD an overall score of 96, which is the new leader, and if you want to see how it compares to its peers, check out driversonlyrankings.com. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe to the channel and check out these other videos.